Друзья, снова я. Час спустя мы ожидаем в гости Питер Онорати. Итак, расскажу вам о том, кто у нас будет в гостях, для тех, кто еще не успел проверить. На самом деле, читать списки фильмов людей, которые оказываются моими гостями, скажу честно, непросто. Можно весь час просто зачитывать список картин. Начиная с 1986 года Питер практически, не то что практически, не было ни одного года, чтобы он не снялся в 2, 3, 4 картинах. Среди них и «Менталист», он работал с Мартином Скорсезе, снимался в «Секс, большом, городе» и во многих-многих других классических фильмах, которые все мы знаем. Я жду, что он к нам присоединится. Напоминаю, что наш эфир будет происходить на английском языке, затем мы все это переведем, выложим в IGTV, и вы сможете внимательно пересмотреть эфир снова. Или с теми, с кем вы поделитесь о том, что сейчас у нас происходит грандиозное событие. Мы говорим с Лос-Анджелесом, где сейчас 10 утра с великим актером, который еще вчера был на площадке, я свидетель, с которым меня познакомил мой друг Джо Бассел, в котором Онорати также снимался, в чьем фильме Питер Оnorati также снимался. В общем, эфир будет великолепный. Когда я родилась, этот человек уже снимался в кино. Сколько всего интересного мы сможем сейчас узнать. Итак, смотрим, присоединился ли. Yes, he's waiting for us. And...
Hello.
Peter, hi, hello. Thank you so much for joining this live. I know that you're not such a big fan of those stuff, but like it's really, really important for me to have you here and ask your advices, your experience and everything that you've been through since the very beginning, because I know that you started from a football and you were a great football player at the very beginning. And here in this program, we're sharing with the beginners and with the experienced actors through famous people. What was the way? What was the moment that actually made you understand that your career is something that you want to do for the rest of your life? And then after that question, I'm going to ask you how is the quarantine time goes in LA.
Okay. Okay. So do you want me to start with the question? Well, of course, gave me an education in college, but I went on to get my master's degree in business. And I was in the business world for 12 years before I became an actor. So I amassed a lot of life experience. Some other actors might have to study to do certain roles. I did not have to. I lived those roles. My last job, I was kind of an ad man. I was the director of marketing and research for a very famous women's magazine called McCall's. Mm-hmm. So I dealt with professionals all the time. So if I ever had to play a professional after that, I didn't have to research it. I was that, you know. So 12 years of life experience first. And then actually, that's when I made.
But Peter, it's also your own kind of thing that you're very focused and interested in people. It doesn't mean that everyone who is experienced can go and act everything that he saw around themselves without studying. It's something that you've been born with.
Right. I think actors are great empaths. I think when I think about it, I have a catalog in my mind of all the joys and sorrows that I experienced in my life, from just a slight turn of the head when I'm telling someone something important to a punch in the head. They both hurt just as much, but I have that whole catalog, and I visit those things all the time when I work. I use them. I remember them. It's not so much what you might call a sense memory, but it is, as I said, a catalog of experience with which to draw upon when I'm doing a role.
Yes, it means you're present most of the time. Present, because sometimes people are just living in their head, but you're focused and you're there in the moment. That's amazing. So you've never studied acting?
Well, No, not really. No. While I was working at McCall's in New York City, I entered an improvisational comedy group on a dare from an old girlfriend. And we were performing in all the little rat holes around New York City doing improvisation. And to me, without any real acting training, that is the best training for any actor, because it teaches you a couple things. It teaches you to think and be in the moment. But most important, it teaches you a lesson for life. It teaches you to take what you have been given and heighten and explore that in a positive way. That can work in life as well as in acting. Some of the muscles that I developed early on, and then I had maybe about a year when I left the business world. I tried to study, but I started working, and I never studied after that, and I was very blessed.
And I know that since 1986, you had 4 or 5 movies a year, and you're kind of naturally, when on set and you felt like it's all yours, but can you try to remember your very first experience, your thoughts, your, you know, when you don't know anything and you're there on set, or it was too long ago that it's already forgotten?
Well, my first experience was in commercials. So because I was a businessman, when I entered the acting world, I thought, and because I was trained in improvisation, I thought if I was going to be a success at that time, commercials would be the best way, because I could sustain a character for 30 seconds. You know, I had done that on stage as improvisation. And my first commercial I got, I auditioned for it. I didn't get it. And then they called me and had me come right up to the set, get dressed and get into it. And I had to play a lawyer. And, you know, I had law in both undergraduate and graduate school. And I had met with plenty of lawyers. So it was both scary and exhilarating to be able to put on this character, or this conglomeration of characters that I had known before in my life. And that was my first commercial. It was United Airlines. And I think it might be interesting to people how I got into the business, if you want to hear that.
Yes, please. That was on my list of questions.
Okay. So I was working, as I said, as an executive on Park Avenue in New York, doing this improvisation with a group. And I had some of my market research picked up in the trade publications, advertising age. And so I went into my boss and I said, listen, there are companies calling me about my research and trying to steal me away from the company, from McCall's. And I said, I really don't want to go, but maybe you could help to match their salary.
Right.
Well, she got very mad at me, and she made my life miserable for about 6 months. She realigned my job description and so on. And so my then girlfriend, who was in the improv group, who is now my wife, she said to me, well, I think you could be an actor. And I said, oh, really? So I can starve and have 4 jobs like you? So then she punched me in the eye. And
I would too.
And so I put the ice back on my eye. I took it off, and I entered a class in commercials. And within 2 weeks, I was on hold for a national beer commercial. And from then on, I realized that maybe that's what I was meant to do.
That's so amazing. And your wife is an actress too. That is such a beautiful story. You've met so long ago, and because of her advice, and then you became an actor, very successful. Did she continue her career as an actress?
No, she's a very successful writer and producer. She has written on shows for HBO. She's actually in development right now. She wrote on Suddenly Susan with Brooke Shields. She wrote on many. Yeah. She has a partner.
Sorry, it's embarrassing. I've learned everything about you, and I
That's
missed
okay.
that huge
Oh,
part.
no. No, that's okay. And actually, it's a good thing that she went into a different direction, because over the years, when times were slow for me, they were fine for her. So we've had a great partnership in that way. And but yeah, but she was the first. So every time I booked a job, I bought her a gift.
Yeah, well, yes. Tell me, Peter, I know that your parents and your blood is Italian, right?
Yes.
But you've been born in United States. When you were cast, I mean, in one way, it illuminates your parts as an actor, right? Or
Yes.
it helps you. Can you tell me about that a little bit? Because you look foreigner for United States, but you are an American. So how does
Yes.
that work for you?
You mean being an Italian American? How does that work for me? Well,
In acting career.
very often it has worked against me. I have played some roles that have had Jewish surnames. I have played some roles that have had Polish surnames, but that was only because they liked my acting enough that they didn't care. But there have been roles that I've wanted to go up for, bigger roles that are not, Italian characters. And I have heard, well, he's Italian. And I said, wait a minute. I said, my grandfather, my mother's father, came here from Argentina. So if I want, I can claim partially to be Latino, even though he was Italian. And I'm fairly fluent in Spanish. I'm more fluent in Spanish than I am in Italian. But so that's always a problem. The typecasting is always and will always be a problem unless you're just a huge star and you say, I want to do this, and they say, okay. But growing up Italian American in my generation was a very interesting time, because my parents, when they grew up as Italian Americans, it was a very, very persecuted ethnic group. They were maybe only a half step above being African Americans to most other Americans. So the sensitivities that they developed that flowed to me were one of climbing up the scale and dealing with a modicum of persecution,
Oh.
In fact, my mother, who was fluent in Italian, never spoke Italian in our house, because when she was a kid, it wasn't in fashion to be Italian, And so I carry that with me, and very sorry that they never taught me Italian, because I love the language. I love Spanish. I love Italian. I mean, I loved hearing you speak Russian. Languages are so amazing and so indicative sometimes of the culture. I just had a very, this is very quick. It's not about acting, but in a sense it might be. The other day, I was having some construction work done in my backyard, and the Latino contractors were there, and I was speaking to them in Spanish. And the thing that they were putting together, I wanted to say, was like a puzzle. It was a pergola. And I didn't know the Spanish word for puzzle. So I went and looked it up. And the Spanish word for puzzle is rompecabezas, which means break your head.
Rompecabezas?
Rompecabezas. To break, it breaks your head. And so how beautiful is that in describing a puzzle?
Yes, it's like, guys, please break your head now.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, well, The Godfather is a legendary, most famous favorite movie at all times. It's kind of that time that you're describing, when in the United States there was like a tough. And have you ever been to Italy yourself? Have you ever interested in going to the places? Because I saw your Instagram page and I can see that you're growing teas, or like you have your own yard. So there is some Italian blood, like that is really, really.
I actually went back 2 years ago, and I went to spend some time with my cousins who are in the city of Frosinone, which is just an hour south of Rome. And they took me up the top of the mountain to see the place where my grandfather was born. And there was an Onorati living there. And he took me around this farmhouse that they had restored. And something very interesting happened, at least to me. They had restored this old farmhouse beautifully. And as I looked down, I saw a chimney with a plaster patch on it. One of those things that just kind of like putting tape on something, right? And I thought, boy, they did all this work in making the place look good. Why did they leave that patch up there? And as I got closer, I took a picture of the patch, and it said 1903 RO was inscribed in it. Rocco Onorati was my great-grandfather, and he patched that chimney, and they left it.
Oh my gosh, isn't that beautiful?
It was fantastic.
So, you know, the Italian family worldwide is, to me personally, I've never seen such a sweetness, like, you know, with Georgians maybe, but like when there is one person creating this whole thing for the family and keeps it the same way. Did you transform that into your family?
Yes, I'm actually right now. I had one of the pictures on Instagram. I'm almost done, but I'm building a mosaic with the family coat of arms, and it's going to go right in the middle of the crosswalk in my gardens when I'm done. And my sons all know, they knew one of my grandfathers, and they met him when they were very young. And I tell them stories about him all the time because this was my mother's father. My father's father was the one in Frosinone, and he died in 1961 when I was very young. But my mother's father was the one who came from Argentina and was an incredible character. And he just the greatest stories in the world. I'll tell you one quick story. So my father came from 5 brothers. My mother came from 3 sisters. And so my mother's father had no sons. So he took my uncle and my father, his son-in-laws, to Italy with him one time. And I'm not going to tell you some of the off-color stories, but I'll tell you this one. So he was, I hope I could say this, he was a great bullshitter, you know?
Yes.
Okay? And so they were standing in Vatican Square. And my father said, "Hey, Pop, which is the window that the Pope comes out when he gives the blessing?" My grandfather says, "Oh, it's that the window over there." My uncle says, "If it's that the window over there, how come there's 10,000 people over there on the other side?" My grandfather says, "Well, they wait over in the shade and they move over when your papa come out," right? So they're standing over on the side that he said. Sure enough, the Pope comes out all the way across Vatican Square where the rest of the people were. And they look at my grandfather and he goes, "Ah, they must have changed." 500 years in the same window, and they changed that day. You know.
Oops.
That's the kind of guy he was.
That's really, really interesting. And
So my boys get all the stories, and like I said, they met him, so they know where it comes from. There's another great story I don't think I have time for, but about an indiscretion he committed.
No, tell us.
Okay.
We have time.
Okay.
I want to hear it.
In my entryway is an old Victrola, which was in my grandfather's basement. And I used to look at that thing. I love antiques. If you look at my house, I have antiques all over the place. So one day I said to him, "You don't want that Victrola. Why don't you let me take it? It's in the cellar." He says, "No, that's a piece of shit. You take it. I don't want it," right? So I take it and I'm restoring it. And I take the back panel off, and out falls a plastic bag with 4 letters, a dried flower, and a picture of a woman. Now, If you're in my house, you see in my dining room, I have all the family pictures all over the dining room. Everybody. I don't know who this woman is. So
And
now,
why was she hiding?
yeah, in the back of the Victrola. So now I said to my mother, look, I found these letters. They're all written in Italian from and to Grandpa. I said, do you know what it is? And she said, well, what was the postmark? I said, I think it was 1948. She said, oh, that's when your grandfather had an affair and he got kicked out of the house. Right? So now I tell her, I said, okay, leak the story to him and see if he wants to talk about it, right? So we had a big Easter dinner, some feast, and he comes up and he says, hey, Pete, maybe if we get a break in the dinner, I come down to your house, I look at them letters. I said, sure, because I lived in the same town at the time. So we go down, and he's looking at the letters. His name is Donato Scoresi.
Mhm.
And he says, oh, no, this is not mine. I said, it says Donato Scoresi all over the front. He goes, oh, yeah, they're mine. So now I ask him the story. Now, he was a shoemaker, and he had a shoemaker repair shop in Denville, New Jersey. And the next town over was Dover, New Jersey. So he said, wow, I was planning to go to Italy one time. And this woman come from Dover to my shop. And I say I was go to Italy. And she say she have a daughter which live in Bologna. If I go over there to go by to see the daughter. He says, well, I was passed by Bologna on my way. Now he was going from Rome to Naples. That's like going in your place to Georgia to get to Berlin, you know?
I was on the way.
Yeah, I was on the way, right? He says, and I look up at this girl, and I was thinking I was not married, but I was. I said, no shit. I said, what happened? He says, well, your grandmother, she find the letters, and she throw me out of the house. I go to Florida. I live with my friend Vern a couple of months, and then I come back. Now, my mother says she remembers my grandmother, who was about 2 feet tall, on the phone with the woman from Dover and saying in Italian, holding the dried flower, you see this dried flower? That's the way your daughter gonna dry up before she get to my husband. Click.
I mean, it's such a character, and it's so much like power in there and passion.
Yeah.
This is so great. Well, Peter, tell me, knowing that you have such a big family, brothers, and your wife has the sisters, and it's a huge family that supports each other. Did it help? Did it help you in your career? Because usually when we go that way,
Yeah.
to the film industry, when we are, exploring ourselves for lots of people, what can be the most enemy? It's the self-consciousness and being not sure about yourself. Did that big family help you, knowing that they're gonna love you and you have them anyways, to not ever worry about something that's happening outside of your house? How
Well,
does it help?
you know, they never doubted me, and they gave me the feeling. I remember my father, saying, look, you got your master's degree. You did everything that I ever wanted to do. You go ahead, try it, and they knew that I was secure. I mean, unlike most actors, when I entered acting, I had savings. I had my house half paid for, so I didn't have all the pressures of someone who starts out very young. And so I was insulated, and they saw that, and they said, if he wants to play around for a while, let him play around, and so no one criticized me, no one put any pressure on me or anything else. And quite frankly, I think they were happy because it ended up in me getting married to my wife, Jeanette, which they might have thought I never would have done before,
Why? Why so?
Well, because she started me in this career, and we moved forward in our relationship, you know, then. And we got to the point where, in fact, she said to me, Jeanette said to me, we better get married before your grandmother dies. And I said, you're probably right. And my grandmother died a month before our wedding. So I said, so do we still have to do this? And she hit me.
Such an Italian character in that. Like, at least inside, you guys have to feel freedom.
Yeah, but you know what? But my family never, you know, they never discouraged me from anything that I tried to do. I mean, I wanted to play professional football. I went to a small college so that I would play there, and I had to try out for professional football, and I got cut. And you know, my family was always behind me. And now it's very interesting for my three sons to have come up in a world where I am a fairly successful actor and my wife is a successful writer, because this is a manufactured existence. We're very lucky. Very few people have the careers that we have had.
Exactly.
And can provide for a family and can put your sons through college and everything else. It's very unique, even though, you know, we're not super famous. I'm not Robert De Niro. I'm not, you know, Pacino. But
you're established professionals who knows how to work and take responsibility for family, and love is there. But would you recommend your sons to go after you to do the same career, or do you see them in something else, or even more than that, do you allow themselves to decide?
Well, I said to all my sons, I said, listen, if you want to do what I do, I would appreciate it if you do it the way I did it. You go to college, you get a degree in something else that you like and can make a living at. And then if you want to screw around in my business, you'll go ahead and screw around in my business. And you can always go back to the other thing that you like, that you have an education for. And they all did it.
First of all, it means that take care of yourself money-wise, house, family, that you can really, yes, money-wise.
Yeah.
And then acting, it's not something that you can rely on and really, yes, that's a great new thing that I got in my actor stuff. Very important to know that acting cannot be the main career that really feeds you and your family.
My wife,
Amazing.
when she took acting lessons in Santa Barbara before we met, years before, she took acting lessons from a very famous leading man of the late 1950s. His name was Bradford Dillman. He was in a movie with Marilyn Monroe. He played St. Francis of Assisi. He was quite famous.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, if you want to be an actor, find something else you like to do as much and can make a living at, and you'll have a better chance of being an actor. And it makes sense, because if you're going into a room auditioning for a role and you don't know where your food or your rent is coming from, how can you have an open instrument? You know, it's very hard. Some people do it and some people are successful at it. But for me, I wanted the job as bad as everybody, but I didn't need it. And I think that makes a difference.
That's 100% right. And then when you're established as a human being, then you can easily share. And acting is sharing and telling a story. What can you share if you don't know anything except that you have no breakfast this morning? And by being just a dreamer, you will probably fail as much painful as it wouldn't be if you really take care of yourself first. Thank you so much for that advice. This is so amazing. Can you recommend us, please, movies? My question at the very beginning was about this quarantine situation. I know that you're working all the time. And I had a question, like, was there something that you had to stop on working on, and that's the project that won't probably continue? Have you heard of the situations where the production already started, but had to stop and probably won't shoot that movie after what happened, or something like that?
I haven't heard of anything. I went up for a movie that was supposed to go in May. I haven't heard if they shut it down or whatever. I have a good friend from Canada who lived here, and she had to shut down the production of her movie. and another good friend who was a PA on a movie, Joe's girlfriend, who had to shut down her movie with Sandra Bullock and has to go back and do that. But in terms of television, I think they are scheduled here to start in July, which is what they do every year. So the only loss was the end of last season, which is really only a couple episodes for all the regular television shows. So I don't know, I don't know what's, and I was scheduled to do an episode of a situation comedy called Mom with Allison Janney. It was going to be my third one. And they shut down production that week. So I didn't do it, but they ended up paying me anyway, which was really nice of them. I think you're going to see a lot of new writing and things come out. In fact, are you familiar with the Actors Studio that Lee Strasberg started out?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I finished Baron Brown's studio and that one as well. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Actors Studio and in the acting unit. And I just last year submitted a play that I wrote, and they admitted me to the playwright directors unit. So I'm now working on rewriting that play.
Well, awesome! Congratulations.
So those are some of the things that I'll do if work doesn't start up soon, or So I didn't get a pilot this year. I was a regular on SWAT 2 years ago. I was a semi-regular on This Is Us. And then I just started on Mom. So,
and here we have a question about Mom. Sorry to interrupt you. Just the last question, and you said that we have would have loved seeing how your story on Mom progressed.
Well, the episode that they wrote for me was a progression of it that didn't get filmed. So maybe it'll get filmed next season. But it was a great character for me to play because most of the time I play all these hard-ass guys. Like in SWAT, I played a hard-ass old man cop. And, in This Is Us, I play an alcoholic father. This was kind of a sweet guy and a great opportunity for me, And everybody that knows me from my hometown said, well, that's who you are. I said, yeah, I know. They said, but how do you do that? I said, I'm acting.
I'm acting. It's one of me inside me.
Yeah, I have to pay off my kids' college.
Absolutely. So what you said before I interrupt you with the question was like, if the world stops, if nothing is going to happen in the movie industry, you have your own things that you would love to do. Is you're writing plays, and always something is going on in your head. And so you have a play now you're writing about. My question is, if you had a choice or a chance to write about this quarantine world global situation, would it be a comedy or a drama? Would it be based on a real story or not? And how big would you go on that?
You know what? If I had that chance, I've thought about that, and I just think it's such a daunting task. But if I had a chance, I would try my best to make it a comedy, even though the drama is so intense and the politics surrounding the drama are so visceral that they make me sick at times. I think the only way to deal with it would be a comedy, So if I was to approach it, I probably, since my roots are improvisation and comedy, I'd probably start first in a comedy. But don't forget, some of the best comedy comes out of drama, out of a dramatic situation, and that's one of the things you learn in improvisation is not to steer your performance or your mind towards a joke. It's to live in the moment as the character you are, and the humor will come out of that. Because
it's so important.
Yeah, life is funny, or you check out.
Yes, Peter, I had a question about your experience working with Martin Scorsese, the famous director, and I know that probably you'll remember that experience forever. Otherwise, he wouldn't be him. So tell us a little bit about that experience and how did you guys introduce? How did you get that part, and what did you do for it?
That's actually, there's a great story attached to that too. I was on my first job in television, the last season of a show called Kate and Allie. And we had already moved out here to LA, but Kate and Allie was shot in New York. My wife Jeanette was pregnant, and we wanted to have our son out here. So I was back in New York finishing Kate and Allie. I was on the last episode, and I had a 2:30 flight out of JFK to come back to LA for my son was due to be born. This was a Friday on that Monday.
Oh, wow.
And then I get a call back for Scorsese in Rockefeller Center only 2 hours before I'm supposed to be on the plane. So I got to go. Now, at that time, for the small roles like I got, Scorsese was hiring real mob guys or cops that chased real mob guys, you know? So we all had the same scene to read, and if they like you, they would just find the role for you, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So when I walked in, there's all these mob guys with silver sweatsuits and patent leather sneakers and cigars, right? The guy looks at me and he goes, "What are you reading for?" I go, "Well, I got the signs for Sunny Bamboo." He goes, "You know him?" I go, "No." He goes, "I know him. You don't look nothing like him." I says, "Well, that's what they gave me." He goes, "Well, God bless you, kid." So now I go in to the callback for Scorsese. And because I was still new to the business, I used something that I used back world. I tried to make the meeting mine. So I made up a story, even though it was Scorsese, I made up a story. And because my grandfather that I just told you about, the spelling of his name is exactly the same as Scorsese's without the S.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to Scorsese, before we start, I need to ask if we're related, because I told my grandfather I was going to read for the great director, Martin Scorsese. And my grandfather said, "I think so we have a cousin at one time when you're taking the S out of the name." Scorsese goes,
Yeah,
"Really?
you absolutely came
Really?
from
Because
business.
we can't find our relatives. We can't find our relatives." And I said, "I don't know, where you from?" He goes, "Sicily." I go, "No freaking way. We're not Sicilian. No way." He goes, "What are you?" I says, "Well, we're Napolitans." He goes, "Oh, well, you guys drink too early in the morning. You want to do this?" I said, "Yeah, let's do it." So we read the scene, and I got one of the roles.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And you see that one of the main things that we're doing on casting is like we need to bring something very memorable that nobody else is gonna do. And it's not a cigar, and it's not like a redhead, but you
Yeah.
came and you said, "I'm sorry, if you're my grandfather, or if you're my," and I don't want to be, you know, in your movie. And he's like, "What?" So you shocked him.
Yes.
Such a great story.
Yeah.
And so how was it on set? How is he doing work? Is
was
he
great.
tough?
No, it was great. It was 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And when I got there, I had done 2 wardrobe fittings, and I had 3 outfits for the 3 scenes I was in. And I got in to my trailer, and there was an outfit there, but it wasn't anything that I tried on. And I went, "What the hell is this?" So I wasn't going to say anything to anybody. I just put it on and went to the set. So I'm sitting in the car where they beat me up, and Robert De Niro gets in, and he's wearing one of the suits that I tried on, right? And he goes, "How you doing? I'm Bobby De Niro." I go, "Yeah, I know." He goes, with the De Niro face, right? Right?
And you guys look alike so much.
Yeah. So there was some funny stuff happening in the scene where they're punching me out. Oh, this is so embarrassing. This you might get this and like this. So Scorsese says, okay, Bobby's going to slam you into the front seat twice. And then when you come up, you're going to say your line, and then he's going to punch you. And then you're going to say another line, and then Ray's going to punch you, right? So slam you into the seat 2 times. So action. Boom. 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 Right? Cut. Scorsese comes back over, and he says, so Bobby's going to bang your head into the seat. And I don't want to say, yeah, but De Niro can't count. He keeps banging my head in three times, right? So I said, well, I can lose the line. Let me just lose the line. He goes, no, I want the thing. Because so De Niro's banging my head. So I waited till De Niro was done. And then I said my lines and everything else. Now, when they're hitting me, right? You know how they do it. How you take the shot. And, you throw your head one. So I was going back like this. Well, at the time, I was studying martial arts, and with a violent action in martial arts, you always, have a sound, right? Well, I didn't want to do a martial arts sound. I mean, so when they hit me, I went back to like 3rd grade, and I made the sounds of a cartoon. I went. Like this. And so the sound guy comes in and he says, you don't have to make that noise. We can put it in later. Oh God, I'm so embarrassed.
Oh my God. But the most funniest part is where De Niro wanted to take your line and preferred to punch you instead. I mean, this is so movie moments, so amazing. Have you ever, did you ever had arguments on set? Like where your opinion wouldn't go with the director's opinion or your partner? Did you ever had the moments where you had to stop and just sit down and talk?
I never had a creative argument because it's not my words. I always end up doing what I bring choices to the set. And when I coach people, I tell them you have to have your ego intact. When you go into an audition or when you go into the set, you bring your work, you bring the choices that you have. And if your ego is intact, the director says, I like that choice, I don't like that choice, I don't like that choice. So you have to be prepared. So I never had a creative fight about anything. I did have a couple times when I had a couple of Stephen Bochco series. One was called Civil Wars with Mariel Hemingway. We were the 2 leads. And we had a director of photography who turned out to be a great guy. But he used to speak to the extras in a very condescending and nasty way. And so that was probably my first fight. I told him, I said, don't you ever speak to an actor or an extra like that again.
Yeah.
And that was the only time. It was very disrespectful. And I don't remember ever having a creative fight because I'm a hired gun. It's not my words. Even if it's my series, it's not my words. I make them my words, and hopefully there's a collaboration between the writers and directors, and they see that the way I do it is maybe the best way. Very often, if you come prepared, writers will hear something in their own words that they never put in there. And if they're collaborative, they'll go, oh yeah, that's way better than what I wrote. But if they're tight to their words, then you've got to do them the way they were, So, or movement. And again, and that, by the way, changes too. If you're leading a series, you come in to rehearse a scene, the director says, okay, what do you want to do? So you walk around and you do what you want to do. And then he says, well, I can't cover it this way, but I can cover it this way if you do this. And you collaborate,
It's amazing that you're able to do it on set.
If you're just a guest star, you go here, you say your line, you go home and collect your check. That's it.
Yeah, I've been to CSI New York in one of the episodes, and I was the one who found the body. And my next question was for you to tell me the difference between a huge television shows and feature films, also low and big budget. But what you're saying, just what I remember really much from CSI is that one day we were shooting one scene, and there was like 16 cameras with the screens and all these people. And I remember that we had to wait for 6 hours. We went over the day, and for 5 minutes, so did nothing. And I was like, our time is up, should we go? They're like, wait, 5 minutes more than we were supposed to on the contract. And they paid the full day after that. And I mean, this is such a great and so different. Like, how can you shoot one scene for the whole day or maybe two? It's such a...
And in features, you know, in features it does take a little longer, you know. But most of the features I've done since Goodfellas, I mean, I did a few movies of the week, and as a lead, so I was given a lot of leeway about how to do things. But a lot of the ones that I've done are, you know, low budget independents, and you know, you have to what we call run and gun, man, and so you're allowed a collaboration, but you also have to understand the time and location constraints, and you have to work. It's a great thing because you're creating a life, but you're creating a life under constraints that you never thought about. And so all of a sudden you have to be in a moment, or you'll just freeze and not do anything, you know. But if you come prepared and you know who you are as a character, you can do whatever they throw at you. You know, it will still come out. True. The essence of your performance, the essence of the character will still come out.
Have you ever dismissed the part? Have you ever been invited to a role where you didn't feel yourself in there and you had to say no?
Yeah, a couple times. There were very early on in my career, there was a big movie that I was asked to do a small part in it, and it was a gang rape scene, and I said, nope, can't do that. Sorry, I don't care. You know who this director is. I don't care. I can't do that. You know, there was a couple other things, a couple other bad guys that had some sort of either child molestation or child murders or things like that. And I said, I can't do that stuff. I just, you know, I mean, I could do it. I don't want to, you know.
Got it. And another question, would you do a movie for your friend, or if you like a script without any money, just for free because you like the material, are you still available for those? Or?
Yes, if it's a union contract, I mean, you know, I have to, you know, do right by my union. Sure. I just did a Lifetime movie for a friend. Somebody backed out at the last minute. He asked me to do it. I did it for peanuts. I didn't even really make gas money, but it was a fun little script, and it was a friend of mine, and he needed somebody, so I did it. You know, you know, I don't have any
rules.
image of myself as somebody. I'll give you an example. A long time ago, I did 4 episodes of Walker, Texas Ranger. They had been coming to me for a while asking me to do it. And my agents and managers who had this image of my career or something said, no, you don't want to do that. It's not a great show. It's blah, blah, blah. So finally, do you know who Ellen Burstyn is? Okay. Ellen Burstyn is a friend of the family. And she was here over Thanksgiving around that time. And I talked to her. I said, Ellen, you know, they're offering me this job on Walker, Texas Ranger. And blah, 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 blah. And she said, I said, you know, my agents are hemming and hawing. They don't want me to do it. She goes, do you like the character? And I said, yeah. She goes, it's about the work. It's not about the show. It's about the work. And I did that show, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my entire career. Chuck Norris came up to me and said, hey, man, I really love your work. If there's anything you want to do, anything you want to change or anything like that, let me know. And I went, holy shit, really? And so if you ever see these episodes.
I remember you there. You have no idea how much in Russia we loved Walker, and I
I'm sure.
remember you there, and Lisa Mililo, who is my acting mother. She was a producer on that show at the time when you were
Yes.
there. So
Yeah.
you probably guys know each other, and she's like,
Yes.
for 8 years we worked together. I almost lived at her house in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
I know those roles that she did in Walker, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, yes, tell me more about that.
Well, see, that's what I said to Chuck. I said, listen, here's the thing. You guys are all doing martial arts. I said, I'm a cop from New York. I'm a fish out of water here. Now, I'm trained in martial arts, but wouldn't it be better if whatever I did was street fighting, right? And the stuntman went, yay! Oh my God, because he got to do something different. And so all my fight scenes are like breaking bottles over people's heads, wrapping cords around them, kicking. It was so much fun. And he just gave me respect that I didn't expect, you know?
That's so amazing. Yes, so great. We have a few very interesting questions here. How to avoid a street type characters due to nationality? How to avoid it? But we talked about that in the beginning, I think, right? So it's from personality.
I mean, I try. I mean, I played a lawyer in my series, so you always carry the quality of who you are with you. If you play a lawyer, you're a lawyer who came from the street, probably. If you play, a king, you're a king who came up from a peasant. You know, that's the quality of your countenance when you do something. You know.
Next question. Were you nervous about the Sex and the City role? I don't think nervous would be correct even word.
Well, I was nervous.
Were you nervous? Tell me about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, I had only done one other nude scene before that. It was in Tales from the Crypt, where I was completely naked with hardcore sex on the floor and stuff. And that's very nerve-wracking for a man because you want to affect the other actress. You want to be sexy for her, but you don't want to be in the reality of it and end up doing something that you shouldn't be doing. So it's really, really hard and nervous. So I came up with a phrase. I came up with a phrase that I told Kim Cattrall before we started. I said, listen, I want to apologize ahead of time for either the presence or the lack of a response to this situation, because I am no hero and you're not ugly.
You gave her a huge compliment, and for yourself, you secured yourself in both ways, because there's no right and wrong, or I've never thought of love scenes from the man's point of view, because for girls, and I had a few when I was playing a lead, I had scenes with my husbands, and for girl it's much easier because we're flirtatious from just being born. It's normal for us, and for a man it's like you're trying to avoid the openness, and that's very interesting.
Yes, and I, and like I said, I wanted, but the Sex and the City roles were just, that was a lot of hardcore, just banging, and that was, and it actually was fun. There's an interesting story about that. I wrestled in high school and in college, so the executive producer called me and said, hey, do you want to do this character in Sex and the City? And I said, no, I'm going to wash my hair. I said, of course I want to do it, So they flew me to New York, and I told Kim that, and Kim said, oh, thank you. She goes, I'm so glad to have an actor doing this. And what you said, she said, I've never heard that before. That's the best, right? And so the director at the time was having a hard time coming up with positions. And since I wrestled, I said, well, listen, so I don't know how off color this is going to sound, but so I said, listen, the idea of this scenario is that because of her problems in life, she's having trouble climaxing by the end of the show. So why do we have to suggest intercourse? I mean, could we suggest some other kind of sex? I said, because I can hold her up in the air like this, you know, and he went, oh no, oh no, I don't. I said, and Kim goes, oh, I would really like that, you know.
Yes, for interest,
But the
different,
guy,
different.
the director was actually gay. So I don't know if that part of heterosexuality wasn't appealing to him or whatever. So I don't know why, but Kim wanted to do it. I wanted to do it. It would have been interesting, but he was so dead set against it. So again, I not to say that he was gay, but from my perspective as a heterosexual man,
He
it
had
would
a
have been really
very,
interesting.
yes, he had illuminated vision of it.
Yeah, it was
Yes,
a
that's
different
kind of,
vision, you know, different vision.
Peter, we have physically 3 minutes left because of
Okay.
the Instagram. Instagram gives us 1 hour. And
Okay.
that was one of my favorite interviews ever. You're so serious, such a, you know, I'm gonna write you in person everything I think about our chat and life. Thank you again for joining us. And in a few weeks, I'm gonna ask you to return. And then, guys, everyone who were watching us and listening, and those who will see it later, because that live is going to be saved on my Instagram account, will write us questions, and in a few weeks we're going to come back and continue our great conversation. And say hello to your family. Thank you to your sons, and big respect to your wife. And yes, just big love and hi from Russia. And while we were talking, this huge thing that happened in the window stopped. So it started 10 minutes before the tornado, and now it's finished. So it means that we created an atmosphere, something very nice and lovely for this evening and day for you. Thank you so much, and see
I hope I
you.
get to see you in person someday.
Yes, absolutely.